It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at Owl and Weasel, number 1 through number 4. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, a place for everyone that loves classic RPGs and anyone who'd like to learn more about them. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. And today from 1975, this will be Owl and Weasel number 1 through number 4. Hope you enjoy the video. So today it's going to be something a little different. It's actually a multi-part series. There'll be 4 separate videos, one for each of the fanzines that'll come after this introduction. Now, Owl and Weasel was put together by Games Workshop starting in 1975. And at that point, Games Workshop was a company that was just interested in games, all kinds of games. In fact, Dungeons & Dragons had not even been created or released in the UK at the time they start putting out Owl and Weasel. So these first 4 fanzines I'm doing for a couple of reasons. One, they're fairly short, and 2, they don't have any fantasy role-playing content in them at all because that concept doesn't exist yet. The first mention of D&D is actually in issue 5, and that'll come out next week. And from there, we'll go forward. I think there are 25 Owl and Weasel fanzines put out in total. We'll cover each of those as we go along. With that, let's get started, and I hope you enjoy today's video. Okay, so first we're going to take a look at Owl and Weasel number 1. This is February 1975. And first thing we have here is the little banner across the top. You've got the weasel and the owl sitting there on a little branch. This is the cover page. This is just a 4-page, more like a newsletter, I guess, right, than anything else, really. Here's what we have inside. An introduction, as is often the case, telling us what we're doing. Then we're going to talk about some different games. Thoughtwave, a game called Killer. Diplopoly, some obscure games. Comments on the Brighton Toy Fair. Article called This is Wargaming, which is a conversation between Ian and Steve. And a crossword puzzle, which we'll see in each of the first 4 issues. At this point, Games Workshop is essentially Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson. So here's our introduction. As they say, and it's actually kind of funny, issue number 1, preserve this copy carefully. Who knows, this very piece of paper you now hold between your fingers may become a rarity, its value soaring to 1 3/4 times its present cost, which was 10 pence. And if you're in the collection market, it's really, really hard to find copies of Owl and Weasel, any of them. And issue 1, of course, in particular, because there weren't very many made and there certainly weren't very many kept. So it's actually worth way, way more than 1 3/4 times its present value. So what are they all about? We have great hopes for the newsletter, all of which depend on participation. So if anyone out there wants to drop us a line or a book, we'll help fill the pages with letters and comments. As they say, this is a newsletter concerned with news and short articles rather than features. We'd especially like to hear from anyone concerned about what could loosely be described as progressive games, something like Hyboria or Midgard, computer gaming, psychological games, new ideas, abstract games, and so forth. The club side of the workshop is free of charge at the moment, but we'll have to ask for self-addressed stamped envelopes if you want some reply back. So now it's time to build up the club. And feel free to use Owl and Weasel to advertise your events and discuss your views. The next article here on the cover is about something called Thoughtwave from Intellect. And it's developed by Eric Solomon. It's called Thoughtwave. And he said, we think players have to try to build a line across a board while trying to, at the same time, prohibit their opponent from doing so. Again, something really simple and yet very challenging, like chess or Go or other games like that have a simple premise but become extremely complicated. And finally, just a short article to say, hey, have you ever heard of Killer? It's like a party game, right? Where you draw straws or somehow designate one person in the group who's the killer and everybody else is not. And all you know is, right, if you are or aren't. And the way it works is if you're the killer randomly throughout the evening or the next few minutes, you try to wink at someone. If you get winked at, you're dead. And so you wait a little bit of time and then you're like, oh, I'm dead. And the goal is to try and identify the person who's the killer before you yourself get killed. Okay, then we have this article on Diplopoly. And he says most people probably know the game Monopoly. And I guess in his mind there are 2 ways you play that. One is by the rules with no as he calls it, shady dealing or partnering between players. And then there's an open way where anything goes, and that encourages people to make side deals or negotiate things and try to work as a team maybe, or with some strategy. And he said, obviously, you'll see the need for formal agreements and maybe even binding agreements and things like that. And his idea, I think, is basically taking that idea of diplomacy, which was a popular game at the time, and applying it to Monopoly to allow some type of strategy. I've never heard of that theory, but anyway, that was his idea. Then they've got just a little notice here. It shows you really their focus at the beginning on games. We want to know if there's any obscure game you might have. Please send us information. We'd like to know about it. Announcement about the Brighton Toy Fair, and a waiting list for people who might be wanting to, whoops, I'll get out of the way, for people who might want to get into some games that are being played. Then there's this article called This is Wargaming, and it's basically just a little back and forth as if Steve and Ian are talking to each other. And basically it's a discussion between Ian, who wants to buy metal miniatures and paint them and have an army and do wargaming, and Steve, who is saying, that seems like a lot of work. I'd rather buy, pre-made board game. And they're sort of debating which one of those things is better. The fact that it's kind of, with wargaming, the rules might change, or you might have to refer to the rules a lot, whereas with a lot of board games, you can learn the rules pretty easily, and then once you know how to play that game, you never have to really look at the rules again. But anyway, it's just a little back and forth about wargaming. Here's a crossword puzzle. There's one in each of the first 4 issues. Again, these are just general game-centered crosswords. And then they have a couple puzzles here in the first couple issues. This first one's a mousetrap, and it says, should you pull or release the string to drop the weight on the mouse? And then they've got this little drawing, and you're supposed to look at it and figure out whether that piece of rope is actually knotted, or if you pull on it, whether it's going to be come free. Again, short and simple. That's our look at Owl and Weasel number 1. Stick around. We'll take a look at Owl and Weasel number 2.